Okay, let's go. Good morning, everybody. This is Gulf Harbour Radio, ZMH286, Patricia and David, and it is a very, very refreshing morning for us this morning. It might only be 11 degrees outside, but the wind has finally dropped 3 knots from the southwest, 1017, strongly rising, and clear skies, thus the rather horrible temperature outside. But boy, were we getting absolutely fed up with the wind. Yesterday we had a visit from Arizona. Carl and Heather are back from Europe, and we could barely hear each other speak in our front room, which faces the west. That wind, it was steady over 30 knots I'm talking about, and the big gusts were around the 43 knot mark. It was just horrible yesterday. And every now and again, absolutely driving horizontal rain. If you can imagine heavy rain showers when it's blowing 35 to 40 knots, that's what it was like yesterday. Absolutely revolting. But it was good to see the Aridonas. And talking about old-time cruises, Kailani, those folk who remember Kailani, they're actually on the east coast of the United States at the moment, in a very civilized part of Massachusetts. All right, we do have some reports. Believe it or not, we had Freedom Song left on the 1st. What day was the 1st? I think that was Tuesday. Heading north to New Caledonia. He reported in this morning. They've still got wind up. He's still got wind up there. Southwest 20. He's up at 31.30 and 17439. Southwest 20 with a swell of 3 meters from the southwest. Needless to say, he's heading north at the moment with that, and then he'll probably go across the top of Norfolk Island, I would imagine, doing what he can. There's been some strong winds at night time. Lady Nada are on their way to New Zealand. They are currently at 1946, 17527, heading from Fiji to New Zealand. They have got currently 22 to 25 southeast, and it's eased from 30 knots overnight. The swell is 2 meters, which has eased from 3 meters. So good morning to you guys, and also Silver Ray, not too far away. 100% cloud cover there. Looks like it might get a little bit, oh yeah, could be. It's a bit hard to tell what's going on with Fiji. It looks pretty clear at the moment, but the cloud is coming. Lupan are in Momi Bay, and they report, it's 40% cloud, but they reckon they can see cloud coming from the northwest, and that's where it's going to come from. 8 to 10 knots southeast at the moment, 1016. But on their way from Suva to Momi Bay yesterday, they got 25 to 30, gusting 38. Wasn't it them that said that they didn't have any wind at the start? 3 meter swells from the southeast, 3+ meters on that trip yesterday. Getting closer to us here are Laris. Good morning, Tim and Nancy. They're coming from Minerva to New Zealand. They're at 2421 and 17941 with 15 knots from the 170 magnetic. We'll call that south. 15 knots from the south. Overcast, 21 degrees, so that's not as bad as our 11 degrees. David said it was 6. What was it, 6 or 8? 6, I think he said this morning. 6 degrees. Yes, southwest 2.5. There's the swell for Polaris. So, quite a lot of people on passage. Thank you for that. It's actually really useful to hear what's going on. And Muscat Cove, thank you, Bob. Southeast at the moment, 15 to 20, 1016, 10% cloud cover. So that's it from around what I have heard at the moment. I'm just going to do a pause because we may need to move to 8297. No, it's okay. It sounds like it's okay, but if it's not, please be quick to let me know, because there's quite a lot of weather stuff to go through this morning, as a lot of you are wanting to get going somewhere, one way or the other, west or south. All right, let's have a look at what the world's doing. If you were in the retail sector, you wouldn't be too happy at the moment. All over the world, retailers are getting worried, because people are moving to online shopping, and unless they manage to cope with that and deal with it, then they don't do too well. In the USA, to date this year, over 8,000 stores have closed. and it's likely to be around the 12,000 mark by the end of the year. A clothing retailer, Forever 21. I've never actually heard of them. Mind you, we haven't been in the States for a long time. It's the latest to close 178 of its stores as it files for bankruptcy. So, yep, not a very good time. North Korea has launched 2 projectiles, one of which landed inside the Japanese exclusive economic zone. Probably not what I would do if I was heading North Korea, because they have just announced that talks between North Korea and the US concerning the nuclear issue will start again. One of those ballistic missiles was actually launched from underwater, not from a submarine, but from a platform underwater to practice for a launch from a submarine. In Finland, a student carrying a sword entered a school. Now that's a bit different, isn't it? And started stabbing people. One woman was killed and several were injured in a place called Kuopio, Kuopio, for anybody out there who's from Finland. Oh, did I tell you it was 3rd of October today? It's hard to believe, isn't it, that it's the 3rd of October. Peru is in turmoil. There's a lot of countries that don't seem to have their government organisation together. It's far too difficult to explain what's going on there, but the president has dissolved Congress, and Congress don't want to be dissolved, and they've got another person for president, and it's all very confusing. What else? Oh, this was an interesting one. A high court in the UK has ruled that a digital automated signature is legally binding. I often wondered that, because every now and again you're asked to either sign something and send it, or use one of those digital signature things, and I often wondered about that, but this was an argument between 2 lawyer companies, so it was a very significant ruling from the High Court. So be very wary of using an automated signature on anything you send, because it is legally binding. Another very good thing I think that has happened from the EU. Now often they have so many rules and regulations you wonder, well, you don't wonder why Britain wants to leave, but they have now brought in a right to repair rule, and this covers all appliances. From April 2021, at least they give you a couple of years to get organised, from April 2021, firms will have to make things like lighting and refrigerators and washing machines and dishwashers, all those sort of appliances, they have to make them longer lasting, and they have to supply spare parts for up to 10 years. Evidently, consumers in Europe are getting absolutely fed up with things that break down just when they're out of warranty. In fact, they want to be able to repair things themselves, but the manufacturers have drawn the line there, saying that it would be too risky, and that they would only make parts available to professional fix-it people, which of course is a bit of a problem if you don't live in a main centre, because trying to find someone to fix a dishwasher or whatever is actually getting harder and harder. People are getting used to, if it breaks down, throw it away. But that is a really, really good move, I think, to require things to last a lot longer than they always used to. Okay, down into the very south of the world, depending on which way you're looking at it from space, the Antarctic Shelf, the Amari Antarctic Shelf, a 315 billion ton iceberg has broken off the Antarctic Shelf. It is actually bigger than Greater London in size, and it's 210 metres thick. But interestingly, all the scientists agree it has nothing to do with climate change. It's all a matter of balancing what goes on down there. They've been following this for years. As it snows in one part, if something has to drop off the other part to keep it all in balance. There was all very technical scientific reasons for this, but it's a very large piece of the shelf coming off anyway, which will be monitored, of course, because the last time something happened, it did cause a little bit of a problem to shipping down there. Well, from the very cold to the very warm, farmers in the Netherlands decided to have a tractor protest during rush hour. Over 2,200 tractors jammed the streets for about 700 miles, centering on The Hague. They were absolutely fed up, so a report came out that called for inefficient cattle farmers to be shut down. Now, I'm not sure how you do that. Do you? Anyway, it's all to do with nitrogen oxide emissions from the poor old cows, and they were just absolutely fed up with the fact that the airline industry wasn't being targeted, but they were. So under the banner, no farmers, no food, that's what they did. They just blocked the roads. Okay, the Dow dropped yesterday, by the way, for those living on your investments, 350 points because of the latest from the American manufacturing sector. Activity has dropped to its lowest level in 10 years. This is blamed on the US-China trade wars, which is having some interesting spin-off effects around the world. Okay, finally, on the news, the North American teams didn't do too well in the Rugby World Cup. France beat the USA 33-9 last night, and New Zealand beat Canada 63-0. So I hope they're not exhausted after running up and down all that time. Okay, we've got local talent in Noumea. Yes, well, we're going to have a discussion about getting from New Caledonia today, I believe. Nananui Whake, 5 to 10 knots southeast at 20%, 1014.6 and 26 degrees. And Whistler did report and in fact set some good photos of the pumice that's floating around yesterday. That's why
no more pumice pictures.
David doesn't want any more pumice pictures. This reporter said, well, we were there a long time ago, not in Nananui Whake, but certainly when there was an eruption in Tonga. And yeah, it was quite interesting, but it certainly gets far and wide, that light pumice, that's for sure. Port Vila, thank you, Eagles winds 10 knots from the east-southeast, gusting higher, fairly cloudy, 1016.5. And yeah, again from Noumea, we've got 15 knots from the southeast, 1020 and 20 degrees. Actually, the area that doesn't look very good, we haven't had any reports this morning except for Port Vila. That's right. It's not looking very nice with that big band that's covering all of Vanuatu by the look of it, but certainly Samoa looks good, and Tonga and Fiji don't look too bad. Cloud around, same with New Cal, but we'll wait and see what the boss has to say here shortly. That's about it from me, because I know he's got quite a lot to talk about, and I'll just check whether there's anything else coming on the emails. No. Thank you for those reports from Lady Nada and Lara Stowe, really interesting, and Freedom Song going the opposite direction. So we'll keep those coming to you because it is of interest to people that are following along. All right, I'll just do a pause to see what the frequency is sounding like, and then with a bit of luck we'll continue here, and David will take over the microphone. Sounds okay. Well, not at my end, but their end.
Yep. Okay. Good morning, everybody. We'll take a quick look at 500 millibar, and it's showing a very, very interesting analysis this morning. The shortwave trough that was over New Zealand has now moved east a wee bit. The axis about 170 west. Now there's a fairly moderate ridge that's found in the central to the lower Tasman. But another shortwave trough is just east of Bundaberg. Now, we have another ridge. This is actually an important one. That's over central Australia. Now, the main weather maker, of course, is going to be the Tasman Ridge. And the surface high that has been produced by this ridge by tomorrow is going to be near 30 south and 160 east. Now, the isobars are such that we'll have southerlies from New Zealand north to 25 south. Well, that means it's more or less on the nose for those of you who left the islands earlier in the week. Now, by Saturday, that's the 5th, I believe, winds at 30 south to New Zealand will be from the west. The frontal band that we forecast should strike the North Island very early on Sunday morning, and that'll be preceded by west-northwest winds, followed by southerlies. So, well, this sort of summarizes this past week's passage window. And I guess if we had to rate it, we'd say wasn't a terrible window, but it wasn't a good window either. But those of you that tried it or are still out there, I guess, it's too late now to change your mind, huh? So in the tropics, a tropical disturbance is showing up over the Santa Cruz Islands. Now, you know about the trough that's over the Solomons and whatnot. Well, from that trough, this disturbance has been popping up and decreasing in intensity and popping up and on and on and on. Well, now it looks like it is there, situated again right about over the Santa Cruz Islands. Now a trough runs from the Louisiades directly to the disturbance, or the other way around, depending upon how you want to look at it. And two other troughs extend as well. One goes to Tuvalu, it splits, it goes on to Tokelau, the other branch goes on to Wallace, and it sort of tickles Samoa and keeps going. The third trough from this disturbance goes to Vanuatu, unfortunately. Cloud extends east from Anisham, actually to southern Fiji and on to southern Tonga. There's quite a bit of cloud if you look at imagery on this. A fairly active looking trough, but just to the south of the main island groups. But I believe that this is going to drift north and it's going to hook up with the disturbance by the end of the week. So we are going to see troughing over Fiji and Tonga. And by Sunday, all of this is going to intensify. I would say late Sunday, Fiji is probably going to be a very wet place, particularly the southern Lao, the Kendavu area. Plenty of wind too, 25 knots, more or less easterly quadrant, but we could have cyclonic rotation. It all depends on what happens with this disturbance. But it doesn't look very good anyhow for that period of time. So certainly be aware of that and be careful of what's coming. Quickly looking at Tonga. Tonga Met there has picked up a weak trough that's affecting the Vavaus and the Hapai group. Expect cloudy periods, isolated showers, of course. Winds south to southeast, about 10 to 15, they reckon, rising up to 20 at times. And the seas about 2 meters, and a southerly swell, actually a southwesterly swell, about 2.5 meters rolling in. Barometric pressure for Vavau, 6 o'clock this morning, 1014 millibar, 1014. And they had scattered to broken cloud. So expect the winds tomorrow, southeast about 15 to 20, but strong winds we're looking at Monday into Tuesday. Easterlies 25 knots, at least in that range, the 25 knot range. And that disturbance, all that activity over Fiji is going to be moving to the Tonga area. Over to Fiji now, where the trough again sits to the north and that other one is sitting to the south. But over the chain itself, we're looking at scattered to broken cloud, not too bad at all. And the weather between these two troughs actually is going to be pretty similar today and probably partially into tomorrow. The winds today, mostly southeast 15 to 20, about the same winds on Friday. And we'll see lighter air today in the wind shadow of western Viti Levu. That would include the Muscat Cove area. And whenever we have these easterlies or southeasterlies, we always have wind shadow effects in that part of Viti Levu, and that makes it a pleasant place to be. Sort of the southern Yasawas are included in this. But anyway, I do believe that we will see convective activity later tomorrow, increasing in intensity Saturday and Sunday, and Monday is going to be a no fun day. So again, it's coming. Be aware of it and take steps to just make sure you're anchored all right. So be prepared for that. Fresh to strong winds. There'll be heavy rain in this squally activity, and that means wind shifts and that sort of thing. Vavau's Trough is pretty obvious on imagery, as Patricia's looking at it right now. Yes, there are breaks in the cloud, but very heavy convective cloud just to the north of the banks. Looking at the satellite loop, it's heading directly toward the banks and also the northern group. I would assume Luganville is going to see some showers today and tomorrow, and probably right through Saturday for that area. So expect quite fresh winds today, up and down actually, southeast 20 to 25 knots. So a lot of wind. Tomorrow 15 to 20, slightly lighter, still out of the southeast. And I believe we'll see troughing right through Sunday, maybe even Monday, as this whole system just sort of expands. Now, NewCal is a mixed bag. The loyalties are showing rain bands, but the Southern Lagoon simply has broken cloud. To the south of the outer reef, though, we can see stratus and stratoQ in abundance. There is a lot of cloud just to the south. So anyway, expect cloudy conditions today, fresh winds, east-southeast in the 20-knot range, and picking up later. We could be seeing gusts up to 30 knots, and that includes the Loyalty Islands as well. So watch out for those winds. And cloudy tomorrow as well. Winds probably 15 to 20 east-southeast. Now some actuals. The outer reef gusting east-southeast 26 knots. Ile de Pan southeast 17. Noumea east-southeast 15, gusting 26. And the barometer there is 1021.1. And over in Lifu, southeast, east-southeast, 12, gusting 25. And the barometer 1019.3. Now, that concludes the basic summary for today and tomorrow. And I mentioned yesterday I was going to take a look. We talked about a crystal ball here for the NewCal folks. And apparently there's quite a gaggle of boats now in New Caledonia wanting to get eventually to New Zealand. Some going to Australia. That's a pretty easy trip. But the one to New Zealand is definitely, well, it can be pretty sporty. Let's put it that way. And the way the weather has been going right now, it's very iffy as to trying to pick a particular window. But I think what I'm going to do today, I'm going to give you some basic averages that you could maybe live with. And tomorrow, I'm going to take a better look at a possible window. I looked last night. I did a very rough and dirty look last night, and I'm not happy looking at the models this morning, how much they've changed, and it's sort of messed up what I wanted to tell you, I'm afraid. But this part of it is still good. So if you have a pencil, and by the way, a lot of this are in the papers that we have on our website that Patricia has spent a lot of time putting them on. But anyhow, this will summarize things for you without having to dig through all of it. So I'm going to give you some averages now for cold fronts and highs. They're my numbers, and I've established them over the last 11 or 12 years that we've been doing this. Of course, we've been cruising for 15 to 20 years, but these 11 or 12 years are actually since we've been running this radio station. How many years now?
9 years.
9 years, anyhow. Okay, so you can jot these down. We're going to talk first about an average cold front. This is in the Southwest Pacific. It's got nothing to do with the rest of the world. Speed, 20 to 25 knots. That means it goes about 8 to 10 degrees per day if you were tracking this. And if you were to look, I'm going to use a distance of Tasmania. We'll call Tasmania Tassie. I hope they don't get mad abbreviating that. Tassie to New Zealand, it will take an average cold front 2 to 3 days. That's all it takes. So if you see a cold front, fairly aggressive looking cold front, 8 to 10 degrees per day, that's all it's going to take, 2 to 3 days to get to New Zealand. Now, a very fast cold front, and we get them, they'll go 40 knots. And that's 16 degrees a day. And that'll take 1.5 days to get from Tassie to New Zealand. And a typical high center, is about 15 knots. Sometimes they're running about 20, 21 knots. But at 15 knots, that's 6 degrees a day. So that means about 4 days from Tassie to New Zealand. So this allows you to very quickly look at some of these things and have an idea without having to look at your models how long it's going to take for them to get to a certain place. And the low centers, a depression center, they go about 25 knots, and that's about 10 degrees a day, and that means 2.5 days from Tassie to New Zealand. So these are quick little ways to find out very quickly how fast these things are moving and when they'll get to your area. Now, there's a lot of things that are going to change these averages, but we're not going to get into them. This is just for rough guidance. Now, the other thing is NewCal to 30 South. I like to use 30 South because that's sort of a decision-making point. 30 South, 28 South, where you make a decision to go and to get a little bit of easting or westing, depending upon what's happening. That's about 480 miles from New Caledonia to 30 South. And if you're a boat that does about 5.5 knots, and most of the boats that do email us, even though they could be very fast boats, they tend to use about that speed. That's 132 miles a day. So that'll take you a little over 3.5 days. We'll call it 4 days to get from New Caledonia to 30 South. 4-day trip. And then from 30 South to New Zealand, and we'll call New Zealand 35 South, that's sort of the top of the country. That's about 300 miles. And that'll take about 2.25 days or 2 to 3 days, right in there. We'll call it 2.5 days. And that's pretty accurate. That's about what we do it in, have done it in, time after time after time. We've done this trip dozens of times, and it averages out to be about like that. Now, when do we go? So some ideas that I have used over the years is I would like to see a high. This is when we depart. I would like to see a high over New Zealand. We're doing the planning now. When we get to 30 South, so we're off and running. When we get to 30 South, we're looking at our models. Is there a high over New Zealand at about that point? We'd like to see a nice little high when we're at 30 South, sitting over New Zealand. And that means, if that is the case, that high would be around the bight of Australia about 5.5 days before we leave NewCal. And that's figuring the highs moving anywhere from 18 to 20 knots to do that. Then when we're at 30 South, we'll be looking at where the cold fronts are. And if we see a cold front about the longitude of western Tasmania, we'll be quite happy, because that means we'll probably arrive just before that front gets to northern New Zealand, and we'll enjoy essentially northerly quadrant winds before the frontal band comes in, and that gives a real shot in the arm to get into port when that happens. And it takes, like I said, about 2 to 3 days to get to New Zealand from 30 South. So if we're arriving about a half a day, if we could beat that cold front by a half a day, then that'll be actually an outstanding performance. So what I was going to do then is I was looking at the models, and I was trying to pick, well, looking at what I just said, when could we leave New Caledonia to get to New Zealand? And I was looking at a couple of models, trying to blend them together, and it looked like there was a high that was going to be over New Zealand about the 16th of October, which is Wednesday. Then figuring about 4 days from New Cal to 30 South, that was looking at a departure date of the 12th of October. So 12 October. Looked good last night, but it didn't look so red hot this morning. It looked like there was going to be fairly light air over New Cal at that time, so that would make for a fairly nice departure weather. It was a low between New Zealand and Australia. It looked like it would be far enough west where we would beat it. Arrival at 30 South around the 15th of October. The high should have been over New Zealand about that time, another high, but it didn't look that way this morning. It looked that way last night. This morning, it looked quite confused. A little depression started to pop up just north of New Zealand. So that wasn't working out very well. We were looking at it in an arrival of about the 17th or the 18th of October, where last night the winds were northwest, and I said, well, that's great. This is looking very good. This is what we want. But this morning, the winds looked like they're going to be northeast, and they became northeast because that little depression popped up. So you can see that we can do all these averages, and as you keep looking, things change so rapidly that they may not work at all. So anyhow, just forget about everything that I told you regarding leaving on the, what did I say it was, the 14th. I'm going to do it again tonight, and this being tomorrow being Friday, give you some update before the weekend. So I'll do it again, and using some of these averages, and see if we can see where there might be the possibility of a passage to New Zealand. This is never a simple one, this one, and I can remember telling you that they're trying to decide which side to go on for Norfolk Island is basically a crapshoot. It all depends on what the winds and the currents are doing at the time. But anyhow, we'll do it again. We'll review the averages again briefly and go from there. And like I say, a lot of this are in the papers that I've written over the years. Some of these papers are pretty old now, but they apply to a large extent, I think. So there you go. Hope none of you have gotten too confused. So I'm going to pass it over. Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot, the boss is confused. That means trouble. Okay, here she is. Any questions, come down.
Well, what you can do, whilst I'm just updating from a couple of things that have come in, is have a look at, excuse me, French curve. Want to go from Fiji to New Cal. What is a better day, today or tomorrow? That'll keep you busy while I just tell people the reports in from Lifu are actually not as bad at the moment as what you've talked about. In fact, Q are going to go from Lifu to Uvea today. The current conditions at Lifu, 1018, 20 degrees, 8 to 10 knots from the southeast, and 90% cloud cover. So thanks for that from Q, and also who else was it up there? Oh, that's right. Thank you, John, with the detail there. So yeah, it looks pretty decent. Plenty of wind around.
Was there barometer?
What was that?
Barometer. You gave the barometer.
In Lifu, the Lifu barometer 1018, according to Q.
The airport 101903.
That's pretty close to the airport 1019. Yep. Okay. Get back to the job I gave you. Fiji to New Cal. Oh, and by the way, apologies to all our German listeners. It is your National Day today, and usually I start with that. national anthem, but I'm going to have to finish with it today. So have a very good October the 3rd, your National Day. What else is there that's coming? No, that's about it, really.
The people from Fiji are going to where?
New Caledonia. In fact, I got it confused. There's so many people wanting to get from New Caledonia to New Zealand, and I knew that was a difficult one. But if you do call in or write in, please put your boat name on the email, folks, because I'm getting very confused here. It is important to put your boat name on the subject line because then I can track back to previous emails. I have a list going here of when people want to move and where they're going to move from so that we make sure we cover that in the morning program. But just make sure you put your boat name in the subject line. All right, that's about it from me, and we'll just pass the microphone back. David is having a look at what was a pretty easy trip, Fiji to New Cal. I shall pass the microphone.
Well, it's normally an easy trip because you've got the trades generally, and the winds are, I'm not sure if you gave us an ETA. How many days? They say 4 days?
I don't know what day.
I don't know how many days.
I'll tell you what boat it is.
But anyway, the winds are anywhere between 15 to 20 knots, higher in gusts. But the thing that I'm concerned about is the tropical disturbance that's going to create havoc for Vanuatu and then Fiji itself. It's not going to affect New Caledonia, but there might be some knockoff effects because of that on that trip. It's you're going at a time when the weather is looking very, very iffy between Vanuatu and Vanuatu and Fiji, and there is that trough that's running in between the two. So it looks a little bit sporty right now, and they were wanting to leave
today or
tomorrow. So, well, from a wind standpoint, direction-wise, and even speed, it's really not too bad. Like I say, about 15 to 20. Looking right through Sunday. See what Saturday looks like. About the same. The wind direction is going to be mainly, I would say east-southeast. So not too bad. Almost an annoying direction, really. I like that. Beam reach would be nice, but this is going to be off the quarter for you. And your catamaran, it doesn't matter. But and looking, if you went into Monday, which I don't think you will, it's not too bad. The winds are going to be changing going into Havana Pass. There'll be southerlies by Monday. And I'm looking at any other marine activity.
Good mumble.
I'm going to give this back to Trish because I'm going to look at one other thing.
That reminds me, folks, if you do have a request like that, do remember to put in your ETA because we don't, in many cases, know what your boat type is. I have put that in. I run a spreadsheet here and I put in as much information as possible. But knowing your names and your email address doesn't help us sort of work out what your rough passage time will be. So put in your boat type. And the ETA is better because some people, even if they have a big fast boat, if there's only two of you, do tend to be relatively conservative, particularly at night time, and particularly if the sea conditions aren't very wonderful. So, yep, ETA, very useful. Boat name in subject line. Thank you. And here's David again.
Well, from what I can see, you probably should go sooner than later. Because as this little system develops, I don't know how far south it's going to push. There's outlying cloud that will be affecting possibly New Caledonia along about Sunday, which probably would be your arrival day. I don't know, maybe
4-day trip.
4-day trip.
4-day trip.
Yeah, that's about right. If you wait, you stand more of a chance of getting involved in this. So now would be the time to go if you have to go. If you don't have to go at all, you may want to take a double look at this to be sure, because this system, the models are starting to agree on the intensity of it, and it doesn't look very nice. But your trip, you're right at the fringe of nice and not nice. So good luck on it.
Well, there'll be action on for each curve. I bet they're going to put the pedal to the metal. All right, folks, I don't think there's anything else. I've just updated my spreadsheet on that one. So if there's nothing else, we'll finish the net with the German national anthem. Is there anybody else on radio or with any questions? Please come now. Nothing heard, so tomorrow will be in a big roundup as per usual on a Friday. Boy, we're getting cloud again. Oh, God, you can't win, can you? I was really hoping to do a laundry day today and a day in the garden. But who knows? I'll use the morning to wrap up well in the 11 degrees that we've got. And we'll see you all tomorrow. So as soon as the national anthem for Germany is finished, the frequency is all yours. Cheers all. Ooh, it wasn't a very good version, was it? But sorry about that, folks, but enjoy your day anyway. Cheers all.